Ever tried to improve your moral compass by strumming a guitar? Well, Confucius did, sort of. He wasn't exactly shredding solos, but he did believe music could make you a better person. And that's just one of the many quirky, brilliant ideas from the man who became the ultimate life coach for East Asia. We're diving into the world of Confucius, a philosopher so influential, he's basically the OG of Eastern wisdom. And don't worry, I promise, this won't be a snooze-fest history lesson. We're keeping it witty, a little cheeky, and 100% Confucius approved. So who was this guy? Confucius was born in 551 BCE in what's now Shandong, China. Picture this. He came from a family that was, let's say, not exactly rolling in riches. Think less silver spoon and more wooden chopstick. But Confucius wasn't about to let a little thing like poverty stop him. He was the kind of kid who'd rather hit the books than play outside. Yes, he was that guy. By the time he was an adult, he'd become a teacher, a thinker, and a bit of a political advisor. Imagine him as the ancient version of that professor who's always dropping wisdom bombs in class, but also low-key trying to fix the government. Now, let's talk about what made Confucius such a big deal. His teachings were all about how to be a decent human being. Sounds basic, right? But back in his day, with all the warring states and general chaos, being a decent human was apparently revolutionary. Confucius was like, hey, maybe we should all just chill and treat each other with respect. His big thing was morality, personal and social. He believed in something called ren, which is basically kindness or benevolence. It's the idea that you should be good to others, not because you'll get a gold star, but because it's the right thing to do. Confucius was the ultimate don't be a jerk advocate. But wait, there's more. He also pushed for something called filial piety. Fancy term, I know, but it just means respecting your parents and elders. Confucius was like, listen to your mom, she's been through it. He thought that if you could be respectful at home, you'd be respectful in society, and boom, world peace. Or at least, fewer family feuds at the dinner table. He even had a whole system for how people should behave based on their relationships. It's like he invented the original social etiquette guide. How to Not Embarrass Yourself in Front of the Emperor, Volume 1, one of his most famous ideas? The Golden Rule. Yep, that do unto others thing didn't start with your grandma. It was Confucius who said, don't do to others what you don't want done to you. So next time someone cuts you off in traffic, just remember, Confucius would probably tell you to take a deep breath and not honk like a maniac. Now let's get to the fun part. Confucius's sayings. His wisdom was packed into short, snappy quotes that make you think, wow, that's deep, and then, wait, how do I apply this to my life? He was like the original Twitter philosopher, except, without the character limit. One of his classics? It does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. So if you're still working on that New Year's resolution from 5 years ago, don't sweat it. Confucius has your back. Another gem? The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. Translation, baby steps, people. You don't have to conquer the world in a day. But here's where it gets interesting. Confucius wasn't just about feel-good quotes. He had some pretty strong opinions on government and leadership. He believed that rulers should lead by example, not by force. If the emperor was a good, moral dude, the people would follow suit. It's like he was saying, hey, kings, maybe try being less terrible and see how that works out. Shockingly, not every ruler was on board with this plan. But hey, props for trying. So how did this one guy's ideas spread across an entire continent? Well, after Confucius died in 479 BCE, his students were like, this stuff is gold, we need to write it down. They compiled his teachings into a book called the Analects, which is basically the greatest hits of Confucian wisdom. Think of it as the ancient version of a self-help bestseller. From there, his ideas took off like wildfire, or, more accurately, like a really well-organized bureaucracy. Confucius's philosophy became the backbone of Chinese society, influencing everything from education to government exams. In fact, for centuries, if you wanted to work for the Chinese government, you had to pass exams based on Confucian texts. Imagine having to memorize quotes about morality just to get a desk job. Talk about a tough interview process. But it wasn't just China. Confucius's ideas spread to Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and beyond. He was like the ultimate influencer, shaping the moral code of East Asia for over 2 millennia. No big deal. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Was Confucius always right? Well, he was human, so probably not. Some of his ideas, like the strict social hierarchy, might feel a bit outdated today. He was big on everyone knowing their place, rulers rule, subjects obey, kids listen to parents, and so on. It's like he invented the original stay in your lane meme. But hey, context matters. In a time of chaos, maybe a little structure wasn't the worst idea. Still, Confucius wasn't just some rigid rule follower. He had a sense of humor too. There's a story where he's asked about the afterlife, and he basically says, "Why worry about death when you don't even understand life?" Classic Confucius, always keeping it real. He also loved a good joke, once saying, "I used to take men at their words and was often deceived. Now I listen to their words and watch their actions." Ouch, Confucius coming in hot with the trust issues. But perhaps his most relatable quote is this: "Life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated." Amen to that. If Confucius were alive today, he'd probably be shaking his head at our obsession with overcomplicating everything from relationships to IKEA furniture instructions. Speaking of which, if only he'd left us a manual for assembling a dresser without losing our sanity. So what's the takeaway from all this? Confucius was more than just a dusty old philosopher. He was a guy who believed in the power of kindness, respect, and self-improvement. His ideas shaped East Asia's moral code for centuries, and honestly, they're still pretty solid advice today. Be nice to people, respect your elders, and don't stop learning. Oh, and if you're ever feeling lost, just remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So, take that step. Unless you're assembling IKEA furniture, in which case, maybe call a friend. In the end, Confucius wasn't just teaching morality. He was teaching us how to be better humans. And if that's not worth a little attention, I don't know what is. So next time you're faced with a tough decision, ask yourself, what would Confucius do? Probably something wise, thoughtful, and maybe a little bit witty, just like him.